And that moment where you go live, you stare at the camera for a second and then you're there. Jason Franciosa, welcome, man. Welcome to the live.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we are about to go into a sort of live podcast recording. And we're going to be talking about your journey, really, which is kind of cool. It makes a nice change that we're not just got somebody who's got an agency. You're a co-founder of a really cool sporting goods brand. So looking forward to plunging into this. Where are you coming to us from today, Jason?
I'm in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Nice. So pretty hot weather, I'm imagining there.
It's brutal right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and the British summer actually is quite nice because it never gets too extreme for work. It's not as cool as coming up to the beach, but I imagine that Florida in June is when you feel like leaving. So anyone who's watching with live or on Facebook and wants to put any comments in anywhere, it's an interactive medium. We're going to record the podcast as a sort of separate thing within this live. Feel free to put some comments or questions in for Jason. Certainly, if I were listening, I'd be wanting to pick his brains. So if you are the same, do put some comments in and we'll probably wrap those up towards the end of the show. If you're watching after the live, then do ask any questions or make any comments and we can respond to them outside the live as well. So that said, let's plunge into this as an actual podcast.
Cool.
Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome to the 10K Collective podcast, a sub-podcast of the amazing FBA family for 6, 7 and 8-figure Amazon sellers, or those aspiring to get there. Today, I'm delighted to welcome a 7-figure seller who's ripping up through the ranks at a great speed, a wonderful entrepreneur, and that is Jason Franciosa. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. So we found each other on the sort of Facebook groups, which is unusual. So you're actually one of those people that didn't reach out to me with an agency saying, hi, I want to tell you my story. I kind of begged you to come on and tell the story because I'm very interested in getting a sort of line to actually get from the horse's mouth of people who are really, on the front line of growing their own businesses. And you're a co-founder of Element 26, which is a sporting goods brand focused on helping functional fitness athletes destroy their PRs. I guess PR is not you're not getting after your PR personally. You mean personal bests, right? Is that what that means?
Yeah,
not their
PBs
body. Yeah, and functional fitness. I'm guessing, and I'm saying this, not you, if the lawyers are listening, is basically CrossFit. Is that right?
Yes, CrossFit is our target market.
Amazing. So you got a fairly already. I'm saying that you got a fairly obsessive, intense type of consumer. So that can obviously work really well. Of course, if it goes badly, it could really backfire against you. But that's certainly an interesting choice. So we've got a few things to cover today. But I'd love to hear about your thoughts about mindset, not from the point of somebody who's just posting a nice little quote on Facebook, but for somebody who's actually had to deal with a massive peaks and troughs over the last sort of 18 months. And the first thing I guess we should talk about is just to tell me a little bit about your brand and how did you get started and why?
Sure. So I'm going to go back a little bit prior to that because it'll all tie together. So originally from Massachusetts, graduated UMass, went in the military as an officer, spent 4 years there. When I got out of the military, I was planning to go corporate America, work selling pharmaceutical drugs and stuff like that. And I got offered a position, very well-paying job, the whole 9 yards. About a month before I actually took the job, because they're looking for a position to open up for me to be placed in, I met a guy who said, hey, let's move to Colombia, South America, so Bogota, Colombia, and start a drone company. And I was like, okay, that sounds better than sitting behind a desk for the next 30 years, so why don't I give it a try? Moved down there. That was my first kind of tippy toes into entrepreneurship. It didn't go as well as planned. So we did a lot of government contracts and working in South America is a huge culture shift, especially coming from the military. So it was a lot of lessons learned and challenges and everything, but great experience. Met my incredible wife and learned another language. Got to spend a couple of years down in a totally different country that I'd never experienced. When that kind of failed, a buddy of mine from the military was going into MIT's graduate program for his MBA, and he wanted to go through some of the business incubators. So one was Stanford Ignite out of Stanford, and then we did MIT Fuse as well once he got to MIT, and that was with the drone software company that we had built. So that was my second attempt at entrepreneurship, and that ended up failing as well. So at this point, a lot of my savings were gone, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to just get a job. All the stuff money I had saved up from being in the military and investing and everything was pretty well depleted. And literally the last $2,500 I made was a random contract to go help someone with drone stuff in South America. I used to buy Ryan Moran's brand builder bootcamp. At the time, he had like a whole funnel for training and everything. I was like, hey, this sounds like something I could do. So that kind of is what got me started into e-commerce, was just a random Facebook ad from Ryan Moran, and him preaching, 12 months to a million and all this other stuff. So I started brainstorming, like, what do I want to do? What is the brand that I want to build? And I've always been into fitness and working out, mixed martial arts and lifting. And my best friend from college, we were roommates for 3 years. He graduated with his DPT, his doctor of physical therapy, and he had been a professional power lifter and really into fitness. So I was like, this is easy, this is perfect. We'll launch something in the fitness space. Original, right? I feel like that's what everybody does, right? So we started brainstorming like products, and we wanted to focus on people that were like us. And at the time, we didn't do functional fitness. We were not CrossFitters. We were not into that realm. We were just into general lifting or more powerlifting. So we got started by basically looking at the equipment that we were using and figuring out, what was the problems. You do that through all the traditional methods, looking at negative reviews on existing products and looking at the own gear that we've been using in the whole 9 yards. Figured out we wanted to launch a weightlifting belt. That's when we came out with our, what we call the self-locking weightlifting belt. Because the problem we were solving was Velcro fails over time, and then it's no longer useful. Like if for a Velcro belt, there's leather belts and non-leather belts, just like nylons and cloths and stuff. So yeah, we noticed that there was a problem. We only saw one other belt at the time that had a solution to it, which was a belt called Chic. But it was a totally different design, very niche and focused on the bodybuilding world. So they used a slide lock to solve that problem. And we decided to redesign the belt and use that same slide lock on our belt. Come to find out, like, 3 months after we launched, we realized there was another company that had done this as well. But fortunately, they were not on Amazon. So we launched, and it's been straight up since. What happened once we got out there, once we started selling, is we started getting feedback from our customers. And we noticed a huge trend that almost all of our customers who were excited about this product, reaching out to us and saying, hey, I love this thing, it's really making a difference, were CrossFit athletes. So that's when we said, okay, well, we're in the fitness space, we're very general, we need to focus down so that we can serve a person, so that we can figure out who that person is and what they need and talk to them and solve their problems and really bring them along the journey. So that's when we decided to focus 100% on CrossFit or functional fitness, or whatever you want to call it, and double down on that. And then it's just been very, very pretty much straight up since. We've had our rough patches, of course, especially with COVID and everything else. But I mean, we're for next month, we'll be 4 years in. And this year, we're on track to do about 4 million in sales.
Nice. Yeah. Because I know that it wasn't that long ago that you crossed the 1 million a year threshold, or the sort of run rate, 83,000 a month, I should say. Interesting. So just a couple of reflections. I mean, first of all, you'd had your 2 failed businesses initially. I mean, maybe that's a harsh word, but I guess they didn't work. They didn't make money. So the other thing that strikes me is a couple of things. I mean, first of all, yes, the fitness space is something everyone goes into, but I guess they go into it from an external understanding of this looks like an opportunity, rather than it was something you personally did. And what strikes me as well, and tell me, how important do you think it was that you had a business partner or a person involved in the business who was really very expert in that area? Do you think that's been part of the success, or was that just a kind of coincidence?
Absolutely. So being completely honest, the reason initially was almost imposter syndrome. Because I'm like, why would somebody buy from me if I'm not an expert? I don't have any expertise. And it just made sense. I'm like, this is one of my best friends my whole life, or really since college. He is an expert. Like, there's very few people in the world that has his level of expertise. So I was like, he didn't have a following. He wasn't an influencer like that. But to me, it just made sense to give some authority and legitimacy behind the brand. And even the brand name, Element 26, which the 26th element is iron. So it's kind of the play on the brand name right there. But it was a curtailed to that scientific / methodological aspect of fitness. And the reason it was there is because his background comes from that, having a doctor of physical therapy, and being so well versed in the science of it, and really understanding the foundation, the fundamentals. And that was, in my mind at the time, kind of that differentiating factor of us versus the 8 million other fitness brands out there.
By the way, I'm ashamed of myself. I'm such a nerd that I have behind me here one of my favorite things, which is the periodic table of the elements. And I hadn't made the connection. Element26.co. I was sending an email earlier, like to you, just at element26.co. And I'm like, Element26, strange name. Duh, iron, the iron game. It makes total sense now. I like that little sort of. I can't believe that I missed it. It shows to show that I'm such a non-athlete. You know, we were talking before the show that I do half marathons, and the word half kind of shows my relationship to fitness. It's kind of a little bit come and go, not like the CrossFit guys who are a bit, insanely committed. But that's very, very interesting. I mean, I think you've put a really finger on a very important thing, which he was a legit expert, as in he got an actual certificate from proper scientific institution, not something you give out with your box of cornflakes. Or he hadn't called himself an expert as an influencer. There's such a difference. I think people forget actually knowing what you're talking about at a deep level actually makes a difference to people who are intense about it ever, right? So that I really like that hint. Okay, so you say it's been kind of fairly plain sailing. And let's talk about the scaling up. Obviously, you had a very good start. You identified your customer avatar from who was actually out there, which is very interesting as well. So what would you say has been behind you going from starting 4 years ago with, as you admitted yourself, not a massively original idea, but executed with a lot more intensity, and you had your killer, advantage with your friend with a proper qualification. How come you've got to 4 million and other people haven't? What would you ascribe the bigger picture? What would you describe the from a 30,000 foot view, the elements that you put in place?
Yeah, so I think, to be completely honest, the reason that we were successful and many of our competitors, even people who launched the same product as us, as a weightlifting belt, at the same time as us, because there were some people who did that, and I was friends with them, but they ended up not being successful, was because we didn't try and copy anybody else. So when we launched our product, we were the first version of our weightlifting belt on Amazon. Now there's only copycats, but none of them can replicate our success because they're just trying to copy us. And if you're just trying to copy the top guy and just white label it, it's very difficult to convince someone to buy that versus just buying the original. So then if you're doing that, you're playing the price game. And you're just playing a never-ending battle to the bottom because someone can always come out with a cheaper version of what you have. Versus if you are the first to do it, or as long as you're not trying to trailblaze a completely new market, that's very difficult to do, and you need a very large marketing budget to do that. But if you have some sort of true difference with the product that you're selling, some sort of true difference with the brand that you're promoting, and really give the customer a reason to purchase your product versus your competitor, there's really no better way to get started, and that's what kind of helped our initial success. Follow-on products don't need to be as crazily differentiated because you have a customer base and you have a loyal fan base, and at that point, you're just serving them what they need. But to get started and to really be successful and get your foot in the door and break into a new market, if you have no new reason for someone to switch from the brand they're already loyal to, why would they? So that was hugely successful.
So just on that point then, to your point, follow-up products don't have to be so different because you have a loyal customer base. Well, that makes sense in theory, but on Amazon, obviously, famously, they're Amazon's customers, and it gets harder and harder and harder every month almost to contact them, whether it's through internal messaging or even downloading their address lists and so forth. So how did that theoretically totally understandable point you just made, how did that show up in the Amazon world?
The same thing. So once you have once you have an audience or you have traffic or you have some sort of way to direct sales and viewership, then it makes it much easier to be competitive in highly competitive spaces without having that specific differentiation. And to be fair, all of our products have some sort of differentiation. We don't launch straight white label products of anything. Trying to think. The only thing that is fairly the least amount of differentiation would be our tape, but even that does have some differentiation. It's just very hard to explain because it's the adhesive we use is a little bit different than everyone else. But launching new products is much easier if you have an audience, you have email lists, you have a loyal fan base, and that's what we've been able to double down on. So it really comes down to building the true brand, and not just saying, oh, I have a brand and I paid an influencer to post about me, but truly being like recognized in your space. Like this summer's been incredible because there's a lot of major CrossFit competitions happening. We're seeing our gear used on the top stages in the world. And then our customers see that and like, oh, wow, you guys have that too. I want that too. Or they come to us and we get messages all the time like, hey, I saw a bunch of your gear at the Granite Games the other day, or I saw a bunch of your gear at the Midwest Atlantic competition, or we're going to be at the CrossFit Games next month. We'll have
Amazing.
A booth there. And, so that's what really makes it so much easier. None of our competitors on Amazon are really doing that.
Great. So you've partly answered my question, which I want to just dig into a bit more, because it's such, for an Amazon-based seller, such a tricky thing that you building a true brand. You guys obviously are really killing it in the sort of major platform without inducing legal issues for your brand is you're getting used in conjunction with that. So you've kind of got yourself into naturally, organically being, essentially being using influencers. You wouldn't call them influencers necessarily in the narrow sort of world of the internet. But tell me a little bit about this loyal fan base, I guess, and audience. Does that mean that you've then had a very off Amazon way of building ways to contact people, email, chatbot sequences, whatever else it is? I mean, YouTube subscribers. What's your kind of off Amazon way of contacting this audience to maximize that?
Email all day. So email is huge for us. Chatbots we tried for a little bit, not a fan, especially after I think it was March 2019 changes from Facebook. They don't allow you to send broadcast messages to outreach to your audience. So at that point, it's like, what's the point of having it, right? I get a lot of people like to use their black hat tactics with chatbots, but we don't do black hat tactics. I think it's just too high risk. For what? Just to speed up the process a little bit. But you could get to $10 million a year, and then Amazon cracks down on black hat stuff, and all of a sudden you're out of the business because you tried cheating the system. So email's been great for us. We have a Facebook group, not as large as our email, but our hardcore, loyal followers are all in our Facebook group. And then again, just showing up, like going to events in person. Like all of our team members are avid CrossFitters now. This morning I just got back from CrossFit when you messaged me. So we're there in person. We're going through the journey with them. And then it also, like we discussed previously, but it also makes the entire journey much more rewarding and exciting. And when you come out with a new product, it's not just, oh, I can't wait to sell this. It's like, I can't wait to use this. We have some products in the works that I'm testing right now, and I'm excited. Like, I'm pumped to launch it, not because it's going to create a lot of sales. Like, they might not, but I don't care because I'm going to use it.
I really love that little phrase, a very tweetable. I'm not just excited to sell this, I'm excited to use it. That's a great hint as to whether you really care about your brand, I guess. That's great. So one kind of slightly more tactical question, but I got to ask this because it's so hard for at least most of us. By the way, simple but highly effective, go to real events and actually be a user of your products. Really fantastically simple, but most people don't do that. So that's another great hint there. But building an email list is not easy. So where are you getting the traffic from, and how are you convincing people to give you your email list? I mean, it's a bit tactical, but I'd like to just dive into that for a sec.
Sure. Well, the best way to get an email address is a sale. So website sales. So for me, I'll gladly spend either a break even or even lose money on that sale just to get the email list of an actual customer. So a huge mistake that a lot of people, especially Amazon sellers, make, because they think an email is an email, and they're like, oh, if I just get a bunch of emails, people are going to buy it. No, like, just because you have someone's email doesn't mean they actually want to hear from you. But if you have a customer, someone that purchased your product, especially on your website, because your website, they're going to the brand, they're going to talk about you, or they're going to see you, or because they could be coming from a recommendation from a friend, they could be coming from a recommendation from an article they read, they could be coming from some content that you put out there. Those are going to be your highest quality emails because they're most likely to purchase from you again. They're most likely to become part of your ecosystem. Getting your customers back from Amazon is huge. At the same time, our Amazon sales is probably maybe 10% of our actual target athlete. So we focus on CrossFit athletes. Maybe 10% of our actual Amazon sales is that athlete. And 90% is just people who want a weightlifting belt, or they want knee sleeves, or they want, whatever gear is going to be there, right? So Amazon brings a lot of customers. That doesn't mean that's the person that really truly is going to connect with your brand. They just might really like your product, and that's okay. So like one of the most common mistakes when I do coaching that I see with new Amazon sellers, or really e-commerce brands in general, is this fear that if I focus niche on a specific audience, I'm going to lose all the sales from everybody else. I'm a CrossFit only brand. I'm not going to get the powerlifter. I'm not going to get the general athlete. I'm not going to get the the Olympic lifting athlete or whatever. And that's not true at all. You're going to get all those because they see the top level people within your space utilizing the gear, and we get a lot of that. And it's not about numbers; it's about quality. So one of the other biggest mistakes I see often with people trying to build email lists is, again, they get obsessed with numbers. Like, oh, I'm able to get 20-cent emails, and oh, I give a free bottle for an email address of the supplement I'm selling, and that's great. But they're showing up because they want something for free. Giveaways are probably one of the worst ways to collect email addresses, because you're starting the interaction, the relationship that you're building with that customer over a free gift. Do you really think that they're going to come back and start paying for things after they get them for free? No, they want more free stuff. That's how you set the relationship, right?
100%. Yeah,
So
I like
I'll
that
take
a
an email
lot. Yeah.
list of 1,000 people that are true brand believers and truly love my stuff and want to pay for my gear, over 100,000 that just want free crap.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why Amazon sellers tend to do, as you say, a pretty horrible job of email marketing, which, by the way, if you're even semi good at email marketing, it's weird how a competitive advantage it is, given that emails like preceded the World Wide Web. It's insane. And yet it's true, right? I remember, like, I'm so old, I remember being at university back in the day when people were using email. I thought, why would you do that? And lo and behold, it's still a thing. It's still a thing, even those many years later. And the thing is this, the way you start a relationship is the way it continues, right? As you just beautifully expressed that. And we are geared, I think, to the only lever we can pull on Amazon is reducing price via coupons, via whatever else, and or throw money at the PPC, which has a similar effect on the bottom line, i.e. creators. And we're so trained in that by Amazon. You have to just walk away from that, take your fingers off the gun and put it down and go, right, stop spending money and flip that on its head. Capture those who are willing to spend it with you. And that's a beautiful thing right there. Thank you for that. So I just wanted to get in a little bit into that, because obviously it's one thing to say building an audience, and the concrete form of it, email list, like that a lot. Now, coming back then to this brand building, obviously, again, this is like the after picture now, like the fat guy versus the athlete in the pictures, right? So you are the after guy. Your business is beautifully fit and doing really, really well. You started off obviously in a really wise way. What do you think that arc in between? How did you create that sort of brand recognition within your space in what is a pretty short time?
It doesn't feel short. So the problem is a lot of people get into Amazon because they want money. They want the exit. They get enticed by the guru saying, hey, I had a $5 million exit, or a $1 million exit. And people are like, oh, I want a $1 million exit. And then they think that they're going to launch on Amazon and it's going to happen tomorrow. We've been doing this for almost 4 years, right? And that's a lot of work. So building an audience, building a brand is not easy. It takes a lot of work. And we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but just continuously showing up and continuously putting the effort to connect with the audience. And the way you do that is you have to understand your person. You have to understand that you're serving a person, not just building a product. Because nobody buys your product because they want the actual thing. They want the benefit of it. And how do you actually understand what that person wants to benefit if you just focus on the product itself? And yes, some people have done very well just playing the Amazon game. And they do data mining, and they figure out what products are hot selling, and then they try and get to market and have some sort of differentiation based on reviews, and they just have a huge plethora of SKUs. And but to me, that's exhausting. Like there's no enjoyment in that. It's purely about the numbers. It's purely about launching, and all your excitement and self-worth is based on numbers going up. When you have a brand that serves a person, your excitement gets to become around that person and helping them in their journey, and truly understanding what brand building in business is about, which is helping someone achieve their goals. So that allows you to think much longer term, because you're able to understand the full journey of that person and everything that they're going to need, and then what they don't need as well. So you don't launch a bunch of crap that they don't want. And then B, you get more enjoyment out of it, which allows you to think long term and act long term. And if you don't see 20-cent emails, you don't care. He's like, hey, yeah, I paid $2 for this email, but the guy emailed me back when I sent an email and told me his whole story about why he loves this. I'd rather have that $2 email that truly cares about my brand than the 20-cent one who just puts me in the spam folder and reports me to Google.
Yeah, I hear you on that a lot. I think really my experience of the really successful people who built from like 7 figures, say 3 years ago, and I started working with one brand where they were sort of early 7 figures, and they've now gone to 8 figures, and it struck me they really enjoyed the game. I mean, on the one hand, this happened to be one of these people who was into fast cars, and it's sort of a little bit one of those cliches of the sort of bro culture people that appears on a YouTube ad with a Ferrari or whatever, and it's the externals of that don't look good, but I just know he absolutely loves cars, and when you're with him, he enjoys life, he enjoys being able to pay for dinner for everyone and have lots of wine, and probably not a CrossFit kind of person, but also enjoys the game. Like it's a bit, you'd be a bit insane if all you wanted to do was lose a few pounds to get really into CrossFit, right? That would be an insane mismatch. I think that intensity of the game is what attracts people who like playing, I don't know, CrossFit or American football, or football as you would call it, or any very intense activity. As a way of earning money, American football is probably medically inadvisable, but if you love the game, you love the game, right? And I really like the fact that I see this pattern again and again, and you're a classic example. That sort of means that you're not. The other thing you said is that your self-worth based on the numbers going up. I mean, the numbers aren't always going to go up, right? I mean, tell me about your more sort of challenging times and how you think you got through those, because they're never fun, but they've happened to us all in the last sort of while, and they're going to happen again. What's your sort of way of dealing with when the numbers don't look so good for your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a roller coaster ride, right? So March 16th, I remember the day last year, in 2020, COVID hit. Our sales got cut in half from Sunday to Monday. I think Monday was the 16th. And it literally just got cut in half. And it was like the next day, it was still half. The next day, it was still half. So there was a lot of pucker moments, I like to call them, where you're just like, oh, crap. Like, even though we were still up year over year from the previous year, even with half of our sales, it feels terrible. And you freak out. I think it's natural. Like, you can't not be worried. You can't just say, oh, everything's fine. Like, there's always that fear. But it's what you do with it that matters. And what we did was, I got together with my teammates. We discussed it out. We talked it out. We said, okay, well, why is this happening? Is this temporary? We can get through this. And we realized, yeah, I mean, we're going to lockdowns. This is not going to last forever. It's going to come back. So you just keep driving through. And persistence is just so important in business. And then June hit, and we had a inventory order get delayed 30 days longer than expected delivery date. So we ran out of stock, and our sales got destroyed again. And then July, it was like we're still not recovered because the inventory was just getting back in, and we're trying to get back up and running. And it wasn't until August that things started cranking again. But then starting in August, it went through the moon. So it's challenging. It's an emotional train ride, but if you're in it for the right reasons, if you're in it because you truly enjoy what you do, you get up every day and you're excited about it, and you're excited to be around the people that you serve, and you talk to your customers and you get that feedback of how it's helping them, and you show up at the events and you see them in person, so you have that externality of excitement as opposed to just being obsessed with the numbers or the business. And when we get excited about numbers too, like Prime Day, we crushed it. Like, our best sales days ever was this year's Prime Day, and we did 45 grand in 2 days, which was like, wow, that was cool and exciting. But at the end of the day, that's not like what's driving our excitement. It's just an excitement to see the numbers, and we'll normalize that, and then it won't be exciting anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you normalize whatever you get to, don't you? It's very interesting because what you said implies that. I mean, like, your year on year figures were up in March 2020. But because the sales got cut in half overnight, you'd normalize the new sales, and therefore you experienced a 50% loss of sales rather than a year-on-year gain of whatever percentage it was, right? And that's just human, but it's interesting to reflect on how what mind's tricks our mind plays on us. It's only human, but to kind of try and see through that is interesting. And talking it out with the team, I think is great. And if you don't have a team, I guess that's for the solopreneurs. That's when it's much harder. I think that's when having a really good collection of friends and a mastermind of some kind, whether formal or informal, can really be a bacon saver, as it would say, save your bacon. But yeah, and also I guess what I'm getting from both the reason to create the brand, one of the reasons for the success, and the reason you can survive the tough times, all seems to come back to the same thing, which is having a purpose beyond just money, which is I like a lot. I mean, I think I've never seen anyone succeed in this game who is just purely numbers driven. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know some people are more numbers driven than others and sell pretty rubbish products, to be honest. Not many people that I know, but one or two. But they kind of love the game still. They just did it for me, not great reasons, but the other people are pretty obsessed with their products actually helping people. So there's a very major hint. Now, just standing back a bit from the whole Amazon thing, you mentioned obviously you've got somewhere where you're capturing email lists, which I agree is incredibly powerful, done the right way. And you've pointed out beautifully some of the traps, so thank you for that very much. But tell me about the direct-to-consumer side. Is it actually a significant part of your revenue? If not, do you think that matters? How does that play alongside the Amazon thing?
Yeah. So our goal is not to pull away from Amazon. We don't want to become a Shopify brand. With that said, Shopify is where we want our brand to have the best experience for our loyal customers. So we do. I mean, the problem is our Amazon revenue is growing so fast. So it used to be like 10%. Now it's probably like 8% of our sales through Shopify. But that allows us to build our audience, create the best experience for them. Amazon, what I don't like about Amazon is you can't create a great experience for your brand because you're so limited as to what you can do. You can't send follow-up emails. I mean, we used to have follow-up emails that were excellent. And they didn't even ask for reviews or anything. It just purely gives about how best to use the product and everything. And then Amazon blocked us from doing that because they didn't like that we were sending. Actually, they never explained the specific reason. Like, there's no review manipulation, there's no review asked, nothing in the emails. But they stopped that now. Versus someone buys on our website, you get 4 emails just about the product, and it's all about how best to use the product and how to integrate into your workouts. And then they go into our drip campaigns, which is written by my business partner, and it's truly nothing but give. It's truly about how to help them in the journey and the mentality of things. And a lot of it's not even using our gear. It's not even using our product in those emails. It's just tapping into his experience and his expertise and kind of everything that he's learned.
Yeah. By the way, I can't stress enough how great that is to have a genuine expert as part of the team. I just think it's so smart. I think your imposter syndrome thinking was not wrong in the sense, not imposters is too strong a word, but there's a lot of people out there sending very mediocre content out, and the reason is simple because they don't know any more than the customer who's consuming it, right? Why would they? But you can't really beat a medically trained doctor. Like there is no arguing with that, and that, I just love that, really love that. So is the plan then to kind of maintain the relationship between Amazon and Shopify kind of about the same, and just to use it for your kind of premium shop sellers, or could you envisage a time when you might pivot away from that thinking? I have no shares in Shopify, by the way. It sounds like a tangentious question, but I'm just interested.
No, so I would love to continue to expand our website sales. With that said, it's not Amazon is a shopping cart, right? Amazon is a checkout for us. It's not, we don't see that as I don't see myself as an Amazon seller. We do a lot of sales through Amazon. We're a e-commerce brand that has an Amazon sales channel. We also have a Shopify sales channel. We have distributors. We do a lot of things across multiple different income streams. Amazon is our largest, no question about it. But that's because the consumer right now loves to shop on Amazon. If Amazon went away tomorrow, then we would focus on something different because our customers are there to buy from us, and the larger that we grow as a brand, the less they care about where they check out. But for the customer, it's hard to beat the 1 to 2 day shipping, pretty easy returns, So I understand the benefit of it, and I don't want to take that away from the customers. It gives them a great experience.
Yeah, nice. So I like your relationship to that. So yeah, I think of yourself as an e-commerce brand, not an Amazon seller is something that a lot of people theoretically like. It's like they talk about working on not in your business, and then they go and spend 4 hours fiddling with the PPC. So, it's easy to say, but I think that the fact that you actually have a Shopify store and you have that wonderful, successful email strategy it actually shows that you're actually doing it. Tell me a little about this distributors thing, by the way. That's kind of, we kept that quiet, but that sounds pretty significant to me. Is that a big part of your business, or is it planning? Are you planning for it to become more significant, if not?
No, so it helps us with markets that we're not in directly. So we have a few distributors in South America for different countries there. We have a few in the Middle East. And we're always looking to expand it in those areas. In the US, we've done, subscription boxes. We've done deals with local gyms, stuff like that. I'm less concerned about the US because we have a great presence of being able to support our US customers directly. I know we speak the language, and I speak Spanish as well, so I could support South America, but we don't have good shipping. We can't take returns. It's very difficult for us to truly get a great experience in foreign countries where we're not operating directly. So that's where we do distribution deals. So it's been good. It's not like a huge revenue driver or anything for us, but it just allows us to continue to grow the brand and serve athletes in different parts of the world without us having to build out a whole team or supply chain networks and everything else in those areas.
Makes sense, yeah. So it's a kind of way of expanding geographically into areas which really aren't served by Amazon either, by the sound of it. I mean, theoretically, the Middle East, Dubai, but that's very expensive and difficult to set up, I think. So for most people, they look at it and go, yeah, it's not worth it. And South America, yeah, it's the thing is, it's so huge. The distance, I mean, you know better than me, having lived there, but the distances are so vast. It's just as bad as trying to get stuff across the USA with much, much worse infrastructure. I'd imagine that I would definitely want somebody else to handle that problem. So smart move. So I guess one of the reasons that I'm asking about your off Amazon play is because obviously Amazon, there's always the feeling that the water's gradually getting hotter, and that are we frogs boiling to death, or is it just more intense but you can survive it? So the one thing, there'll be multiple challenges in 2021 specifically, right? But the one thing specific to Amazon is, well, the two things, I guess, the IPI stuff and the Amazon ads going up. I'm actually a bit more worried about the Amazon ads thing going up in some ways. So let's talk about that first. Where do you think Amazon's going with this, and how do you deal with the gradual increase in Amazon ads, if indeed you're seeing that?
Yeah, so let's talk Amazon whole for a second. First thing for sellers to understand is Amazon's customer base grew faster than almost any other year last year. So the idea that the blue water isn't there anymore, I don't agree with, because they expanded so much over the last, what is it now? It would be like 14 months, 16 months, since, well, I guess it would be 15 months since COVID hit. So you have a huge, huge buyer pool. And yes, there's a ton of sellers, but the increase in buyers was almost larger than the increase in sellers. So I still think Amazon is incredible opportunity for anyone getting into e-commerce. Now, talking about PPC, so Amazon realizes how profitable a lot of the businesses that are selling on Amazon are, and I mean they get 15% for most products. Some products are less, some products are more, but the majority of products are 15% right off the top. Doesn't matter what price you sell at or what product you have, they get 15% of your revenue, right? And then on top of that, they have PPC plus fulfillment plus they're banking it. But of course, they're a massive public company that's I don't know the market cap today, but I'm pretty sure it's over $1 trillion. So how do you grow at that point? And the way that they're doing it is profit extraction from businesses through PPC. So it's a little bit scary because we're seeing more and more of that first initial interaction with the customer being those PPC placements. And they have their outreach saying, hey, this is beneficial to you because now your new products can get right on top of page one, listing one. Just got to pay $30 a click, no problem. The challenge with that is your profitability starts getting hit. So you have to get really good at PPC, or utilize some agency that's really good at it or whatever. But you got to be very careful not to waste too much money on PPC. At the same time, you need it to be able to launch your products and grow. So you got to have a budget for advertising. Where I see this starting to have a turning point is when Amazon's bids get so competitive because so many people are doing it, and their placement is so all over the place, where organic sales just keep dropping and dropping. Then it starts becoming the question: is it worth paying for Amazon PPC versus paying for non-Amazon PPC, where I get an actual sale through my website? because I can't justify PPC spend on a back-end sale if I don't get customer data. So if I have to now spend 100% of my profit on PPC from my sales, I can't make it up on the back end because I don't own the customer. With, say, Facebook or Google or Pinterest or Reddit, whatever ads you're running off Amazon, if that sale is on my website and not own that customer data, so my next sale is ad-free. I can send an email and get that sale and I paid nothing, so it's pure profit. So Amazon's going to push as hard as they can. They're going to hit a tipping point. Sellers are going to realize that they can get sales for the same price as they can off Amazon. We're going to see a shift away from it. And that might take 10 years though. That's not anywhere, anytime soon. Amazon won't go away because you have, Amazon's a cheat when it comes to the buyer funnel. You have awareness and then kind of warming up all the way down to the sale. They're seeing your listing ready to buy, and then they purchase. So that's why you're able to have extremely high conversion rates, which then allows you to spend more on advertising and still be profitable because you don't need to have multiple interactions with that customer. But we are starting to see it shift more and more where it's getting more and more expensive. And eventually you get that tipping point where, going off Amazon makes sense. So it's an interesting time. And it's an interesting period right now with that. But the opportunity is still huge. I don't think it's any worse than it was, a few years ago. It's getting more expensive, but the buyer pool is huge, and our conversion rate's just been going up and up and up.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's one of those questions that people to ask is Amazon saturated? And I guess it's relative. I mean, what happened in 2013, 14 when a ton of people came in new and started creating the famous courses that I'm not going to give free advertising to. I was one of their shall we say, students is the polite word. So they gave some rather exaggerated expectations in the end of 2014-15 because they'd experienced this incredible addition of customers in 2013, I think, relative to the pool of competitors or sellers, competitors for us and sources for their customers. And it's interesting that there's a sort of mini version of that in 2020. I say mini, obviously 2020, nothing was small in 2020, but the relationship between the two may have still shifted in favor of the more customers versus competitors thing. That's a very interesting reflection. And your reflection on, you're willing to break even to capture the customer data, but you can't justify doing that on Amazon because you don't get the data is a really very interesting, rational kind of reflection point at which you can answer the question, should we still be advertising on Amazon or not? I really like that's a very rational way of looking at it that I hadn't heard articulated that way. That's great. Now, the other big challenge with Amazon is the IPI challenge, right? The inventory being measured across the what do you call it, the store as a whole, the count as a whole, but then also where that might be going in Q4. Because if we're getting inventory limits and it's not even finished Q2 yet, that's kind of ringing alarm bells for me. What are your thoughts about where is it going, and what's your sort of defensive strategy that you guys use or that you would advise others to use?
So again, that's one of the challenges with selling through Amazon's network. You have that, and you can always just look at third-party fulfillment centers and everything else just to have as a backup if you need it. With that said, Amazon knows this is a major challenge, and don't forget, when you lose sales, they're losing a lot of money because they get that 15% plus all this PPC spend, right? So they're doing everything they can to expand that. They don't want you not to be able to send stuff to their warehouses. So I do think just with the reopening and all the supply chain bottlenecks and then the massive growth they had in 2020, plus with Prime Day, just a few days ago, a lot of those restrictions got really tight because so many sellers are trying to send as much as possible prepping for Prime Day and now having to restock. So I'm estimating that they are working very hard to get those numbers back up because they know Q4 is coming and they don't want a bunch of sellers out of stock because that hurts them as well, right? So the cool thing with Amazon and selling on Amazon is you're partnering with Amazon because it's mutually beneficial for you to do well and for Amazon to do well. So I'm not super concerned about it. We have the luxury of being able of having short lead times. We can go from order request delivered to Amazon within 30 to 40 days. So that helps a lot. And we did do a bunch of large shipments as soon as it opened up. So if you see an opportunity where Amazon lets you send stuff in and it's been issues in the past, create those shipping labels, create that thing and lock in what you have. I think at one point we had 27,000 units, and then Amazon brought our max storage allowance down to like 16,000. But since we already had the stuff either on the way or at our warehouses with FBA, they can't take it away. So if you see the opportunity, it opens up, send the inventory and invest in inventory. As long as you can sell the inventory, you can never go wrong with that as an investment. So
yeah, but there's a big if, but you guys have got that proven, so that makes sense. So you mentioned you got short lead times. Now that wasn't given the nature of the product you're selling, what I was expecting to hear. So obviously, that's a massive competitive advantage. I think that's just monster because everyone obsesses about unit economics, and so you should. But people don't look at working capital requirements per product line, anything like, I believe, as deeply as you should. Because if you're ordering stuff from China, the average time it's going to be, your capital's tied up in stock is going to be, 4.5 months if it takes 3 months from order to selling, and then it takes 3 months to sell through. So your numbers are obviously very, very different there. How did you manage to source a sort of hard good in America rather than just supplements or something? And what are your thoughts on that front? Because that sounds to me like a really major advantage.
Yeah, so we manufacture in the Middle East, and we're very fortunate because I was in the military, and a good friend of mine who I served with is one of my business partners, actually. He's a minority owner in a business. A good friend of his moved out to the Middle East and needed a job, essentially. So he opened I guess it'd be sourcing agent, but he directly works with all of our manufacturers in the Middle East. And that's just been so critical and crucial to us for product differentiation and development, and having someone and he's a CrossFitter, of course, as well. So he understands how it's being used, and I don't have to ship everything to me and back to him for minor changes. I can just have him review it, there in theater, and quickly innovate and make modifications. And also for manufacturing shipping, like, hey, if we are running low on stock on something, I need it quick, we can ship it by air. Yeah, it's more expensive, but I'd rather pay a bit more on my cost and not run out of stock versus having to ship by sea and save $1, $2, $3 a unit, but then stock out and lose complete revenue. So that's been a huge, I guess, competitive advantage for us, just having that network and having a former U.S. military person in theater running our supply.
I was going to say, in theatre sounds like you're still sort of thinking military terms of theatres of war and sort of the battleground. So, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting that what you've turned what obviously on paper in theory should be an advantage, having sort of disciplined friends, but it's interesting how you've leveraged your network of people that were really kind of prior to e-commerce by the sound of it. It's sort of partly coincidence, but partly, I think, really digging into who you are and who you know in a really deep way. So that's also seems to me to be part of the your success story. Now, the other obvious thing that I don't know if it's any worse in 2021 than it ever is, but it's always a thing, is copycats, right? So how do you protect yourself? You already mentioned you guys are the innovators and you have copycats, but they're not as good. So how do you stay ahead of them in all senses? How do you protect your IP and how do you sort of, innovate to stay ahead of them so that you're never just being shopped on price?
Focus on the person. They can copy all the products they want, but they don't have our brand. They can't take our brand name. They can't take our customers. So when you truly build a relationship, you truly build a brand. It's not just a cool, fun, marketing term or, hey, we build a brand. No, when you truly have, and what is a brand? A brand is a relationship with customers. That's all it is. Your brand's entire purpose is to serve that customer. When you have a true customer base that truly wants your products, they're not going on Amazon to buy the cheap stuff from your competitors who just undercut you and underprice you. There'll be a section of the marketplace that wants that cheap product, and it's just a ripoff of what you have to sell. And that's perfect. I don't want those customers. Those are the most difficult customers to deal with. They want everything to be as cheap as possible. They want discounts. They want coupons. They want, they're going to always have issues and complaints. They're going to be the 20% of your business that just takes up 80% of your time, because they're always going to have problems. They're probably not the person that's going to read through and understand what this is for and who it's for and why they want this and how it's going to benefit them. And even just simple stuff like sizing. Like that 20% is probably going to increase your return rate significantly because they're just going to buy quick because it's cheap. Oh, it doesn't fit, no problem. Let's return it and get the right one next time. But if you're at a higher level, a higher premium customer, and truly have a brand where people want to buy that brand, um, then that's it. Look at any premium brand or any major brand. Like, there's people who buy Apple products because it's Apple. Yet there's a million options when it comes to buying a computer that are way cheaper than a MacBook or whatever. But the majority of the customers want a MacBook. And is it going to truly be different to a level that, like a functionality level? No. They both give you access to a web browser, right?
Yeah, this is true. And I'm an owner of an iMac, which I'm using right now, and I've got a Google Chromebook. And I guess when I bought it, and I just thought it would be cheap computing, and then it wasn't quite up to scratch. So yeah, you're right. There is a quality of customer thing that you put your finger on, which, because we don't see people very directly on Amazon, we have to see it a proxy, like the sort of negative review rates, return rates, etc. But you're right, it really has a very profound financial impact. I mean, return rates just colossally increases the complexity of your business, and it makes it harder to project forward revenue and especially profits as well. So you're absolutely right that you don't want everyone. And again, that's kind of Amazon brainwashing, isn't it? We have to remember that, as you say, you're a brand who may sell primarily on Amazon, but that's just a sales channel, and we don't have to play the cheaper, more selection game that Amazon wants us to play if we don't choose to. That's a really great reminder.
Yeah. So the other piece to it, there's two parts to it. That's that piece.
Yes.
The other piece is innovation. So innovation doesn't stop when you launch a product. All of our products have probably, at this point, especially when we've been selling for more than a year, have probably been through 15, 20, 30 changes. So by the time a competitor makes a copy of our product, we've already improved it by the time he gets to market. So yeah, he might copy our weightlifting belt from October of 2020, but by February of 2021, we've already made changes. And we made changes in February, and we've already made changes that are being manufactured right now, and will launch in a couple months that our competitors don't know about, because we just constantly improving based on feedback and little things that come up. And then if we ever have a competitor that's a true threat because they copy one of our previous examples, all we gotta do is advertise the new change. Hey, we innovated, we made this change, and it's now better than that. So innovation is so critical. And innovation doesn't stop when you launch the product. Innovation is continuous. And there's nothing wrong with constantly improving a product, especially if it's on Amazon. Like, you have to.
This makes a lot of sense. And I guess talking about Apple, I mean, they came up with the iPhone 1, the iPhone 2, the iPhone whatever, 50 trillion. At some point, you could go a bit too far with that. But, people are still buying them. I've got my fourth or fifth iPhone in front of me here. So I guess, I kind of took a downgrade because it didn't seem like the iPhone 10 was much of an upgrade on the 6. But to your point,
you don't need to release a new product to improve a product.
Okay.
Tesla is famous for this. So Tesla has cars. They don't do the 2017 Tesla, 2018 Tesla, 2019 Tesla. Like, literally, you could buy a Tesla in March, and then by May, there's minor changes that improve the Tesla. And that's what's made them so incredible, and their vehicles continuously improving. So you don't have to say, like, here's the 2020, this is 2020 edition, this is 22 edition. You can just do those quote silent revisions, because you're just improving the product for the customer. And your review average is going to increase over time because it becomes a better and better product. And yes, some customers might reach out and be like, hey, we have one customer, and actually in 4 years, we only had this happen one time, where a guy's buddy got our belt because the guy himself loved it. His buddy showed up, and then he couldn't even complain to us because his buddy's was a better product than ours, and he thought it was because we cheaped out on his. I'm like, no, we're just constantly improving and changing. So we explained that to him and sent him a replacement because he was upset about it, and now he's even more loyal to the brand than he was before, because he's like, oh wow, these guys truly care about the products and truly care about the actual result, not just selling me some crap.
Yeah. And by the way, I really love the fact that you're really serious about this business. You're really focused on the product and the user experience, not on what are the latest Amazon hacks, which always depresses me when people ask that. I'm like, that's a really red flag question for me. If I were thinking of investing in your business, I suddenly wouldn't be, because I'm like, your focus is in the wrong place, dude. And as to your point of black hat, like, if you ever want to sell a business and you've done something dodgy, then if the due diligence process is thorough, then you just stop yourself selling your business. I mean, yeah, I take your point there. But so I just got to ask a little bit more about this, because I think it's so critical. How do you actually go about this? We would have to go to chapter and verse or reveal anything secret, but the basics of how do you actually get that continuous innovation built into the actual process? Are you having really kind of quite short production runs for starters? Because that's obviously harder to do if you have 6 months of inventory at any given point. You're only going to be able to innovate, twice in the year, I guess. I mean, what's your process with that?
So again, it comes down to showing up in person and knowing your customer, knowing your person. Because when you actually care about the person, you care about the journey that they're on, in the experience that they're having, then you care about what their feedback is. So you get an email if someone has a problem, and this came up, or you're starting to see, customer service issues here or there, or you go to an event and you watch it being used, like for us on the big stage or in competitions, and you notice things that could be better. You just make the changes. The supply chain side doesn't matter. If it takes you 6 months, who cares? Okay, sell through that 6 months, and then you launch in 6 months. Who cares? If it takes you 2 months, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you can innovate a little bit faster, but that's not what's critical. What's critical is you're truly making important, impactful changes that truly increase the experience for the customer, because you know who your person is, because you understand that this change is going to be beneficial to them on their journey. And that's how you win. The logistics and the how do I do this, and you call the manufacturer and say, hey, I want to make these minor changes.
Yeah.
And yes, some products need, like if you have a plastic product or something that needs a mold, yes, the investment is much greater and stuff like that. So you may want to wait a little bit to make sure that this is the final change you want to make. But who cares? If it takes you a year, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? So there's just way too much obsession with okay, well, how do I make a phone call to my manufacturer to make this change? And you'll figure that out. Google's there.
Yeah.
But
no, of course,
what change do you make?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the what, not the how. It's a very good point. I mean, I think you're right. We obsess a bit too much about the how, and I guess I'm probably guilty of that, like any sort of podcast interviewer as well. But this is a very good point. I mean, yeah, focus on what your customers need and just get it going as quick as you can. It's more or less what I'm taking from that. So this is really, really smart. Now, one thing you mentioned before we went on air is that I was saying, what are you kind of passionate about at the moment? What's really making a difference to your business? And you just mentioned that the simple fact of things opening up again, and I guess particularly in the USA. Europe's varying a bit. London, where I am now, England in sort of late June is kind of opened up, but not entirely. I guess the States varies a bit across the States. But what's your response? Where does that take things?
Yeah, so I mean, here everything's open back up. So for us, it's a very community-based sport. Literally every single box is almost like a family, and then you have these big competitions where everybody getting together to compete, and some of these are like 40, 50, 60,000 person events and stuff like that. So we're just getting back out there. We're showing up in person, meeting people in person. Like, one of the big questions too is like, how do you get an influencer? Like, everybody asks that question. Go meet them. Like, go shake their hand, have a conversation with them, build a true relationship. And I guarantee you an easy yes if you actually show up in person, learn about them, explain your story, tell your story, and tell the brand story. Show them the passion you have about truly caring about the customer. And that's it. It's easy. And then one other thing I want to bring up before we end this podcast is, everyone gets obsessed about the sale of the business. I want to sell for $1 million. I want to sell for $5 million. I want to have $100 million exit, whatever it is. Remember two things. One, nobody wants to buy your crap brand that you want to sell. If an investor is buying your brand or you're buying your business, you better be like excited about it too. So if it's something you built just to sell, it's very hard to find an investor that's going to give you a high valuation on it. Like, the majority of sales or business sales that I've seen do very well and get higher multiples than average. I mean, most Amazon businesses under $1 million, it's like 3x, and then you get to like the 1 to 10 million, and maybe 3 to 5x, depending on the model and stuff like that. But the ones that sell for like 5, 10, 15x are the brands that the owners don't want to sell, right? So build a brand that you truly enjoy and truly love, and then two things happen. One, you're not obsessed about selling it. One, your buyer is going to be much more excited to buy it because you built a true brand that people actually care about, and it's going to have some long-term profitability and be able to grow much faster and quicker and be competitive in the marketplace. And then two, you might not want to sell it, and that's okay. Like, I thought we were going to hit $1 million, and I'm like, sweet, I'm going to be $1 million or $2 million because I have business partners, and I'm going to be a millionaire. But we passed $2 million. I'm like, well, I sell this business. What do I do? Like, why would I sell? So now I'm like, oh, well, maybe when we hit 10 million, then I'll want to sell, because that would be enough to where I can retire in the whole 9 yards. But at the same time, it's like, I wake up every day and I love what I do, and this thing's growing like crazy, and I'm not able to put this money anywhere else in the world to have the same return on investment I have here. So why would I even sell it? So I think the goal for starting an e-commerce brand is to build a brand that you don't want to sell. If you can do that, then you'll get a much higher valuation. You get a much better return on your investment. You also enjoy the journey much more, which is the whole point of this whole thing. Like, if you hate your life for 10 years, but then you get a nice big sale, well, you lost 10 years of your life just for a dollar amount. So to me, that's kind of the end state and the goal, is build a brand that you truly are passionate about, truly love. And it's time to sell when you no longer get excitement out of it. And I think that's when you can consider selling. Or if you just get a huge offer and it makes sense for the growth of the brand and for the customer, because say you're getting bought out by a company that's going to help expand the outreach of the brand, or you're getting bought out by maybe someone who has a much larger customer base that they can plug you into and all of a sudden grow. That's how you get those high multiples, the 10, 15, 20x EBITDA. And it's also how you actually have much more impact on the world, which is kind of the whole point of this.
Yeah, that's, by the way, is not the kind of the whole point for everybody, but it definitely is for you, and having an impact. It's very interesting that even unconsciously, I think the way you articulate this stuff, you're just not going to be shifted from having a mission. Maybe it comes from that military background where you don't, I guess, go into the military just to collect a paycheck because people might shoot at you. I guess you've got to have a bit of a more major driver than that, and maybe that's what the kind of mission-based thinking seems to be built into you, and that's it's very impressive, and it's a great counter to all the kind of very numbers-based things. And talking of shining object syndrome, we haven't even addressed why you shouldn't go into that, but I guess one of the reasons people do that is because it's very numbers driven and people sort of dangling this thing. I think Freud said, he died quite close to where I live, weirdly enough. Sigmund Freud, the great psychologist, he didn't say people need sex and money. He said people need love and work. And I always reflect on that comment because I just think an awful lot of what's on offer there, and then pornography is kind of obviously selling sex, and that drives a lot of the internet and doesn't lead to happiness, I would argue. And the other thing that's similar is people selling money in a sort of semi-pornographic way with all the adverts out there. And again, I would argue it doesn't lead to happiness. What you've got is work. You're obviously working hard, but you're clearly passionate about it. So it's a great example to me of what it can look like. And I hope that the listeners really, get that passion as well. Been a real honor and a privilege, Jason. I love this stuff. This is great. Even better insights than I was hoping. What question should I have asked you that I haven't asked you is my final question.
I didn't come prepared with questions. No, I think this was great. Again, I think as long as you're going at this from the mindset of trying to really affect the lives of other people, it allows you to make the right decisions, which allows you to be successful in business. When you're strictly in a fear-based mindset of I need this, I need to get to a certain amount, I need this sale, I need this new product, I need this tactic, I need this, it's very, very difficult to become successful because it's all about you. And then your customers don't care. Your customers care about them. So once you make that mentality shift of this whole brand building process is about them and not about you, everything just gets so much easier, and then becomes more rewarding. Growth is easy, and products are easy, and you're going to have challenges and stuff, of course, but it just goes away so much faster because you just show up and you see it all happening.
Amazing. I can't even begin to top that. So it just remains for me to say, Jason Franciosa, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, that's a wrap to the podcast. I can't see many comments here, so I think you're very welcome if you're listening to the video or watching the video rather to put any comments in, and we can come back on those. But I just want to say thank you very much again to Jason, and thanks very much for watching the live edition of Amazing FBA /10K Collective podcasts.
Cool.